Hello, welcome back on the channel. So, as you probably realized when clicking on this video, today we are not talking about just one book like I did in past videos, but about a collection of books and a very big collection, if I can say so. Maybe some of you already guessed it, but to be clear, today I'm going to talk briefly about The Wheel of Time, which is a series of fantasy books written, I think, in the before probably the year 2000 by an American novelist named Robert Jordan. So it's a very big time, but also financial investment if you decide to take on this series. On average, you have that um, each book is 800 pages long, and you have 15 of those. So it's going to take a bit of time. It's going to take a bit of space on your bookshelves, and it's going to take some of your financial resources if you, if you get all of them. So should you begin the journey? Well, I got curious as I learned that such a big book series existed, and I decided to tackle the challenge myself. And boy, was that interesting! So before I try to tell you why you should consider reading it, let me very briefly tell you what the series is about. And I'll be brutally short because the the series is very long, and I don't have time in this video to tell you about that entire plot. At the core of it, it's the traditional good and evil kind of story that you have in many fantasy books. Actually, the beginning, the very first book, resembles a lot the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring in particular, as it tells you about this kind of boy that has to embark on a journey to kind of save the world. So there is this very bad entity that wants to destroy the world, and there is the set of heroes that steps up to the occasion and faces him to try and stop him. So, of course, there is a protagonist, there is a bunch of side characters, some are good, some are bad, and there is a journey and a progression of events that lead to the final confrontation at the end of it. So it could almost look uh, kind of naive as a plot, maybe, right? Well, wrong. This book is far from obvious. I think it's interesting, and this is the first reason I would give you as to why you should consider reading the series. If you are, uh, if you have kind of some interest in fantasy reading, this is a very different fantasy book series compared to many others. It begins in a more traditional way with the kind of hero's journey and the typical tropes that you would have in those sorts of books. But as the series progresses, it really starts deviating heavily from where you would expect the story to go. You have a lot of very flawed protagonists. You have some very interesting antagonists, and so and many in many ways the plot doesn't always go the way you would assume it will. So it's kind of interesting because it gives you a fresh take on what a fantasy series of books can look like rather than what you would assume it will look like. So I definitely like that. I like the universe of protagonists that Robert Jordan has designed. So you have something like, I don't know, maybe between 1 and 2,000 characters, of which probably 20 to 30 are the ones that are very kind of recurrent. And so you get their perspective, their POV as you move through the story. The POV moves in this series from one character to the other, to the point that in a couple of books probably you have that the protagonist is barely in it, and in a good chunk of the series the protagonist is not the leading voice of the story, which is again a kind of a fresh take to the genre. You have characters that are kind of the typical hero, but you also have characters that are the unconventional hero, that are maybe a bit more funny, a bit more that are not as convinced about doing the right thing, although they more often than not tend to do the right thing. And so I found that fascinating. And additionally, a lot of those characters and even a lot of the heroes are kind of tedious, are kind of they're very flawed in a way that makes them a bit more human, which I fully love. Another thing that I loved is the magic system. I thought it was interesting to have a male side of the power and a female side of the power that can combine for very interesting effects, but even on their own allow you to do a bunch of things that have to do with kind of elemental forces. And I found that to be very interesting because it has not only kind of the typical magic component of doing things that you would normally not be able to do, but also this kind of additional complexity of different sides of a whole that can work on their own in very different ways or can work in a united way. And so I will not enter into the details, but I found that quite fascinating, to be honest. What else? I also found the kind of the various cultures that the Robert Jordan developed for the books to be super interesting in the sense that you truly feel like the world exists, and it's made up of these different parts to it that um, remind you a bit about how life is really like on Earth. And so, with different cultures and people dressing in different ways and thinking in different ways and prioritizing different things and having different value systems, and I found that very, very fascinating. Honestly, it made me feel like I was part of that world in many cases. After a while, you can even predict, or you can even guess where a character is from, depending on the kind of, depending on the way they talk, or the way they dress, or the way they think. So, very, very many good reasons, let's say, to read through the series. The final reason I will give you is that it's emotional in a very deep way. Like you really at, build a sense of attachment to the characters, but also to the direction that the story takes, and you really want to see what's going to happen. So I would say that um, it's truly the series is very good at kind of hitting you, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to say it. So it's kind of you develop kind of an emotional attachment to the overall book. So many good reasons to read the series. Why should you consider not reading it? Well, first of all, it's very, very long. So if you are not the type that can get through a 800-page book in about a month, it could take you forever to finish the series. I'm a fairly fast reader, and it took me about 1 year to finish through the series, to finish the entire series. And uh, I can tell you, in many cases in particular, you will feel the weight of the books. Some people say that a bunch of the books in the middle are kind of a slog that you have a very hard time carrying through. Um, I have a slightly different um, thought about that. I feel that all the books have a lot of things that are probably sluggish, but some of the books in the middle are very good in my view. Like um, I wouldn't say that they're all kind of part of this slog, and I would say that some of the slog elements are present even in the first books and in the final books. So you need to be very patient. You need to give the writer the benefit of the doubt. You need to trust the process, and you also need to, yeah, maybe some of us like all the details that the writer is able to give, but some don't necessarily like it, and it's fine. You can just push through, and it will be okay, unless you truly despise it, in which case, yeah, this series of books is not for you. The second reason why you should consider not reading the series is that um, I think that the plot is not the most cohesive plot on earth. My impression is that the writer kind of decided where to steer the story on the go. And when you have kind of 14, 15 books to tell a story, if you don't plan well, or if you're not truly kind of incredibly gifted, it's easy that some things derail a bit. So some characters that were, built up and that you were assuming to be super relevant that maybe lose momentum and you don't know what's going to happen with them, or die very rapidly in a way that you find a bit underwhelming, or some plot lines begin and kind of generate some hype and then they kind of phase out in a very um, unconvincing way. And so, yeah, overall, the plot is good, but the subplots and the way that they evolve throughout the books, you really feel that it was not super thought out from the beginning, that some of it was, but a lot of it wasn't. And in some cases, it's a bit disappointing. I will not enter into the specifics, but there are character evolutions or plot lines that I was really curious to see where they were going, and then they didn't end up going anywhere. So I found that a bit, yeah, underwhelming, I would say. What else? Well, um, some of the characters are very can be very frustrating, and particularly if you don't like, let's say, the stereotypes about men and women. A lot of what you're going to read can be very frustrating. Honestly, I looked at that the same way I would look at kind of a history textbook, and so I tried not to make that stop me. But yeah, I know that a bunch of readers are kind of held back by this aspect of the books. But yeah, overall, I try to be as concise as I possibly can. So if you came to this video as a Wheel of Time uh, fan, you're going to think, wow, there's a thousand things that Max didn't say about the book. And I'm happy to for you to tell me your thoughts, by the way, in the comment section. So in case I forgot something major. But my approach was kind of intentional because I'm thinking, hey, if you are kind of just an avid reader like I am and you're just looking for things to read, can I tell you enough to make you feel enticed to read the book? But can I also do that in like 5 to 10 minutes? So otherwise, I know that there are entire YouTube channels that are talking about Wheel of Time, and there's enough to say to fill an entire channel, and that's not me. So that's about what I want to say for today. I hope you found this video interesting. If you have any thoughts on this video or on the channel in general, I would love if you left some comments down below. Please feel free to subscribe. It's free and it helps a ton. And so I see whether I should continue doing these videos or at some point I should stop. Yeah, thank you so much. See you soon. Bye.